Hi everybody, my name is Hannah McAdams and I want to talk to you about how to use automatic spelling. You ready? Okay, so automatic spelling might be right for your student if your student frequently forgets how to spell words previously studied, spends more than an hour a day on spelling with little results, is frustrated with spelling activities like word searches and things, is overwhelmed with the amount of spelling words in a list, copies words over and over again but still can't remember how to spell them, needs more spelling instruction with spelling rules and phonograms, or gets easily discouraged when writing compositions. I'm going to go back. So my name is Hannah. This is me and my daughter Ellie. I created this program for Ellie because we both have these issues when it comes to spelling. I did as a student, she does now, and I found a way to kind of focus the issues that she was having and correct them. Okay, automatic spelling is best for a student who can read. Okay, I've had a couple students who are still learning to read. It may get a little tricky for them after a while. I have lots of students who are dyslexic that use this program, but usually they've kind of conquered the hurdle of reading before they start learning to spell. Students need to know their letters and at least to make the first sound of the letters. They are typical second or third graders, ages 7 or 8, or are weak spellers in upper grades, ages 9 and above. That's usually my target audience, weak spellers in upper grades. Okay. Automatic spelling is a unique spelling program because it was designed to strengthen weak spellers. I truly believe that most spelling programs really don't think about the issues that weak spellers face. So it is a PDF. It has video links embedded in the PDF. There are usually 7 new words in a list, sometimes 8. There is a grid for students to write 60 words every day. We'll talk about that a little bit more. There are 7 new words repeated at least 3 times in the grid, and all the other words in the grid are from previous lessons, so they are getting constant review. Okay. It has a daily dictation sentence starting in lesson 6, daily practice with adding suffixes starting in lesson 9, and practice with plurals and possessives every day. Students who struggle in spelling need more practice, and this program is designed to give them that. It has practice correcting grammar and spelling errors as well. Okay, so let me show you what this looks like. The teacher guide is a PDF, okay, and if you print, you can print it out or you can just read from your device, and it is each lesson is a 2-page spread, so if you print it front and back sides, then you should be able to just open it up and see both the lesson and then the grid. The lesson should be on the left side and the grid on the right. Okay, it is 6 units. Each unit has 8 lessons, and each lesson can be 1 day or 2 days. So we have, if you see in the picture, this is lesson 6B, but there's also a lesson 6A. The way that I do that, we'll talk about it in just a minute, is with the warm-up. If a student can spell all the words in the warm-up correctly without any help, then we just do the B lesson that day. If they struggle, then or get one or more of the words incorrect, then we do the A lesson for that day, and then the next day we'll do the B lesson. That's kind of my guideline, but we'll talk about that in a minute. There are 48 lessons total, but remember, each lesson could be 1 or 2 days, so multiply that by 2. All right, so let me show you what the lesson looks like. So our lesson, you can click, you see where the arrow is pointing. Click here for the Unit 1 playlist. So I have video links to all the lessons. So if you click there on your PDF, then it'll take you to a playlist that has the videos for that lesson. So if you're doing lesson 6, then you just scroll down to lesson 6 and watch that video. Okay, there's also a lesson area on your page that goes over just what we talked about in the video. Some people do not like to use a lot of electronics when they're teaching their students, so I have set it up so that you can teach this by yourself if you want to. You don't need to use the video if you don't want to. Another option is for the teacher to watch the video, see what I'm talking about, and then teach it yourself. It's pretty flexible that way. Okay, we also have a place where you can do plurals and possessives, and I start off with just the plurals. So each day each lesson they have a word that they need to write in the singular and then in the plural, and we go through and it kind of builds. So at first all the words that I choose, you just add an S, but then sometimes you have to change the Y to an I, things like that, and it builds in the lessons. Okay, this is the grid side of your lesson, and this is where you find the new words. Okay, so these are the new words that your student is going to be studying that day. Okay, and then I do want to point out that it says to say farewell by. That's how I handle homophones. I put the definition in the teacher grid for you. So you say to say farewell by, and then the student just writes BYE. They don't have to write to say farewell. Okay, we also have dictation at the bottom of the page starting in lesson 6B. And this is what your student pages look like. Now, I recommend that you print these out and either put them in page protectors, or you could, for some of them, we'll talk about it, but there's a couple other options. So this is where you have the warm-up and the plurals and possessives for the student. So I put that in a page protector and then write with a dry erase marker every day. Okay, and then we have challenge words. These are words that your students miss in the grid, and so you record them and then they have to practice them 3 days in a row, get checks, and then they have kind of tested out of that word. Okay, and then here is a blank grid for them to write on. Now, some people like to print them out and use a new grid every day. That is fine if that's what your student prefers. I'm working with my youngest child, and he's got kind of messy handwriting, and so I do print out a new page for him every day. Most students put them in a page protector and write with a dry erase marker, or better yet, I like wet erase markers. So that's what most students do. Or there are some students that don't like the grid, they just want to write it on notebook paper. That is fine as well. Okay, there is a suffix flowchart that starts in lesson 9 as well. I like it in color because look how beautiful that is, but it doesn't have to be. You can print it out in black and white. Okay, parts of a lesson. So the first thing is the warm-up. This is the student page here, and the warm-up is at the top. Okay, and then when you look on the teacher grid where it says new words, you read those, dictate them to your students. So you say out, and then they write out, beg, to, and so on. Okay, well, let me go back. So this is where I decide whether they need to do list 6A or list 6B. If the students get all of these words correct without any help, then I let them do 6B today, and then we'll do lesson 7 tomorrow. Okay, if a student misses a word, then I want them to do lesson 6A first, and then the next day we'll do lesson 6B. That's kind of my measure for that. You can kind of play around with that and decide, you know, if you have a really busy week and you just need to do the B lesson, it's not going to hurt anything to do that. So you're flexible. Do what works for you. Okay, then they do the challenge words. So these are challenge words that they have missed in other lessons. So you just dictate them, or you just say, please spell all, and they either spell it orally or they can write it down, A-L-L. If they get that right, then you give them a check. Step, if you know, give them a check. If they spell H-I-L, then they don't get a check for that day. Okay, here is the lesson. I showed you this before, so you can either teach the lesson yourself and the box will tell you what to do, or you can watch a video that I've already prepared for you. So if you click there on the playlist, it will take you to my YouTube page, and then you just scroll down to lesson 6, because we're talking about lesson 6 today, and watch the video. Now, I have had a question. If you do lesson 6A and then lesson 6B, there's only one video for both of those. I prefer that you watch them 2 times. So your student watches, say it's Monday and they're doing lesson 6A, watch the video. And then Tuesday they do lesson 6B, watch the video again. But again, you're flexible. If you have a busy week or something, one time will be sufficient, I think, for most students. Okay? And then we have the plurals and possessives. So in this one it says bag and bags, so they will write in their page bag and bags over at the plurals and possessives. So they'll just write bag there and bags. As we get into it, we'll start adding possessives, but in this particular lesson we haven't talked about the possessive rules yet. Okay, and then we have the grid. So this is your teacher grid, and this is your student's blank grid. So you just read. Sometimes people ask me, do you go down the columns or across the rows? It doesn't really matter. I always go across the rows, but whatever works. So you say said, they write said. Okay, it says to say farewell, bye, and they just write BYE. Okay, like that. Okay, and then we have dictation. That starts in lesson 6. And it's this line at the very bottom. So you read, I want you to hear the B, and they write, I want you to hear the B. So if you notice, I put a lot of homophones in my dictation sentences, so they have to really think about which spelling works for this word. I really like to do that just a little bit every day. It really makes a difference. And then you update any challenge words if necessary. So when the student filled out this grid, the student missed the word where, the location where. So I just wrote that down, and then the next day they'll practice those. Okay. All right. So a couple tips and tricks. Here we have your list, and here is the student's grid, and it's really good if you can watch them write. I would prefer that you help them than them make a mistake over and over and reinforce a bad habit. So here we are, the next word is out, so they write out. Then you say the pronoun I, they write I. The location here. Okay, well, if you see, they wrote to listen here. So what you'll do is say, oh, that's to listen here. Do you remember the location word? And then they will rewrite it. If they need help, if they can't remember it, then you just give them the answer, H-E-R-E. And then it will probably appear again in the grid. So when that happens, then you just say, hey, remember you struggled with this. Do you remember how to write the location here? And see if they can do it by themselves the second time. Okay, and then the next word is all, and here they wrote O-L because all, I can see why they would do that, all, right? So we've talked a lot about, or in the lessons, and I will help you with this, but in the lessons we talk a lot about using the third sound of A, and we often double L at the end of the base word. So they know that already. So all I would do is say, oh, hey, remember we're going to use the third sound of A, and we often double, and then see if they can remember how to write that word. So you're not actually giving them the spelling, but you're giving them all the tools they need to spell the word correctly. Okay, and then I want to say you're not married to the grid. What I mean by that is, if your student knows how to spell the insect bee, like that's not hard at all, but you know your student is struggling with a different word, you can replace it, okay? It will not hurt my feelings for you to do this. This is just a guide to help you. So instead of doing the insect bee, maybe your student is struggling with the being verb were. So replace it. Just say, instead of saying be, just say the being verb were, and see if they can spell that. Okay, that's absolutely fine. Another tip is require lowercase letters. I think it's like 95% of English is written in lowercase letters because we only capitalize first words of proper nouns and then the beginning of a sentence. So everything else is lowercase. So I really would prefer that the students write in lowercase letters. Now, an exception obviously is the pronoun I, which is always capitalized. But here it says the preposition or infinitive to. So if they write it in capital letters, say, "Ooh, remember we were going to use lowercase letters today," and have them rewrite it. Okay. Another tip is help students with B and D reversals. So the next word is the conjunction but. If they write dut, just say, "Oh, hey, the B goes the opposite direction." Have them erase that and rewrite it. Okay, I would not put that in the challenge words. I mean, you can if you think that's necessary, but I would just encourage them to write it the correct way. My student, my youngest, really struggles with B and D reversals, and since we've been starting this program, I've seen a huge change in him. He's really starting to, if I say the conjunction but, he just writes it and it's almost automatic, like he just knows the way the B should go just because it feels a certain way. It's a muscle memory thing. So encourage that. Don't count off for that. Don't make them feel bad. Just, don't let them reinforce bad habits. Just correct it. Okay, a couple questions that I've had from lots of automatic spelling users. Do we really ask our students to write 60 words each day? Yes, we do. Why? Well, the thing that makes automatic spelling so different is that I want students to have the practice that they need to really master spelling words. So if you think about it like math facts, you know how math facts, like the multiplication tables, you just have to drill them over and over again, and then finally the student gets it and it's automatic, and then they can go on to multiplying 2-digit by 2-digit numbers, or doing long division, or fractions, things like that, and they don't have to think about those math facts anymore. They're just there. They're just natural. They come to them very easily. Well, the only way we can do that with spelling words that I've found, I'm sure there's other ways, but this is the way that I have found to do it, is to physically write those words over and over again until they just become muscle memory and you just know what to do. Okay, so, and the only way that we can practice a lot of words is for me to put a grid of 60. Now, there are some exceptions. I understand that if you have a student who has severe dysgraphia, that may be a problem. If you have a first grader, I don't recommend automatic spelling for first graders, but there are some first graders that use it. A first grader, that may just be overwhelming. So there are some ways to modify it. I would prefer not to talk about it in this video. But if you have questions, I'm really good about answering emails. So you can just email me at automatic spelling and I will give you some tips. Okay. The next question is, why do you not teach a spelling pattern in one lesson? For example, all the words that end in AT, like cat, hat, mat, rat. Most spelling programs do this, but what I have found is then the students aren't really thinking. They're just like, well, I'm just going to add at to the end of all the words. And so it's just kind of this like autopilot thing. And then when they have to write it outside of a spelling test, they can't retrieve that because they didn't really study the words. So I separate them, and then we really look at each word and the phonograms that they follow and the rules that they follow and analyze them, and that really helps with students being able to, internalize the spelling words. Okay, why do you only teach one homophone instead of a pair or a trio in one lesson? Every spelling program I've ever seen does this. They have, okay, you're going to spell to, T-O, and to, T-W-O, and to, T-O-O in one lesson. Well, what I have found with students who are struggling to spell is that's just too much information. They have a really hard time remembering which word goes with which definition. So what I have done is instead only introduced one of those three, or usually there's two, but in this case there's three, at a time. We learn the word and the definition, and then when we've mastered that, we learn a new spelling and a new definition. And that just seems to eliminate some of the confusion that I see in a lot of students. Okay, so a couple testimonials. What people are saying about automatic spelling. Automatic spelling has been working for my 8-year-old who struggled with all other options. She said it just clicks like the gears in the artwork. I love that metaphor. Isn't that sweet? We have loved automatic spelling. It's all we use now, and it's worked like a charm. We are on lesson 22B. And this is a funny story. I'm not going to lie, I was totally dragging my feet about starting automatic spelling. Spelling has been a nightmare, and we've literally tried all the things. After his lesson today, he scored 100% in the grid. I said, "Wow, I love that you're so obviously learning and you don't hate this." His response was, "I love this." And then he cracked up when I spit coffee all over from utter shock. So hopefully you can add to these testimonials. I really hope that it works for you. Thanks, guys, for listening. I'll talk to you next time.